Welcome to our continuing series on the levels of light body awakening. I am Betty Hamak, and it is my joy to be here with Robin Modafair. Robin is our guide through this journey. Hello, Robin.
Hi, Betty. Good to be with you again. I can feel the energy that's just connecting everything. Yeah.
And I don't think it's any accident that those of us who have found our way here are here in this space and time. And the information is really fun and interesting because we like to make meaning. But as important as that is in understanding the information that's coming through you, I love it that it's also containing the energetic imprints that is hitting each one of us in our own unique ways for what shows up and what is relevant. And I know also that as I re-listen to this information, it will build on itself. So I so appreciate you and your gifts and your generosity of heart in sharing all this information. So I'll let you go forward.
Okay. It's such a joy to be able to do it. I do know that this is probably very, very, important for each and every one of us as we go through this evolutionary process together here on the earth. There is a wonderful opening that is taking place within our beings. There were several things that Betty and I had been talking about off recording right before we started, and wanted to make sure that we brought to attention and mind of the audience and those of you who may want to share some of these understandings with your friends or family or those beautiful spiritual people in your life at this time. Because this is a process that it directly relates to the evolution and awakening of our ascension process, as it relates and interweaves with our DNA, the unlocking of it, and as Betty said, encodings of light envelopes, geometries, toning, sacred languages, all kinds of amazing and wonderful experiences and gifts that abound within the light that is coming online in each of us as our soul guides us into these experiences. And just for a little bit of a recap, I wanted to touch on a few points of this extremely challenging level that we just left, which was light body level 7. And there was so many things that we talked about happening in that particular level, which was the opening of the beginnings of the third eye opening, the pineal and the pituitary, some of the things that you might experience with that, as well as the fourth eye, which was new to a lot of people. And I've had some comments on that, being at the soft spot on the top of the head, the seventh chakra, and awakening there. That fourth eye, as they call it, opens up and allows us to interconnect or begin to see in a multidimensional way. So this is the multidimensionalism of us coming into our awareness. At that stage, also in 7th level, we sense ourselves possibly as other bodies or in other bodies or other selves. We were explained too that there are 12 of us simultaneously experiencing in this particular plane or parallel reality, as we might want to call it. And that is kind of a new concept for many. I had in the past been told myself that there were probably 3 or 4 other host bodies that we could inter-exchange with another particle value of the soul if need be, so that the soul can always continue to grow and get what it's come here to get. But that was a new one on me, the 12. So I guess that makes sense, having a 12-strand DNA, having 12 levels of, beingness, having 12 planetary system. Everything is a base 12 system here. And that just gives you an idea, if there's 12 in this particular parallel, how many expressions of us or of our soul, particleizations or fragments of our soul exist to accumulate the acquired or necessary knowledge that the soul is gleaning from each and every one of its journeys. So these were a few of the things that I wanted to bring up. You move into sort of a different dimensional healer identity. We have some, revelations, how all of us are masters. We begin to understand deeply at those very, very core levels of ourselves, how everyone is a master here, whether it looks like they're mastering limitation or they're mastering, vastness, doesn't really matter. They're still all masters. The soul is experiencing what it needs to get in each of its journeys and revisits here. The spiritual, what do they call it? The spiritual ambition and then the spiritual significance that we might have to deal with, which are kind of created defense systems by our egoic system that come into view as we get closer and closer to understanding truly who and what we are. We start to grasp onto identities of being teacher or master or savior or messiah or healer or fixer or, nurturer, caregiver, all those kind of things. They're saving the planet, saving all of humanity, saving all of creation. So these are things that come upon all humans at a certain time in our awakening process. There's lots of experiences that I've encountered in sessions and even within my own created experience of depression, manic episodes, some experiences of, I really hate to even use the word, but of feelings of suicidal tendencies, just feelings of giving up, being absolutely depleted of energy, hopeless, those kind of things. So there's a lot that swings between the really, really high experiences that are going on in the seventh, because the seventh is always represents transition or transformation. So 7 is a super, super powerful level within this entire experience. And of course, they all are. But there's something that is more powerfully shifting within the opening or the awakening at that particular level. So I just wanted to bring in some of these things that we talked about in our last conversation so that we could start to maybe have that be a flow energetically into our 8th level where we're finding ourselves now. And you and I are going to be talking about all of the things that are going to go on in our 8th level, what we have to look forward to there. So in the 8th level, these are more uplifting experiences, and they're experiences where we're starting to find out really what makes our heart sing. Okay, our heart is awakened in the 7th level, and that's what's creating a lot of this feels like pole shifts within our very being. Things that can be considered painful, heart attacks. There's a lot of heartache, a lot of heart expansion and awakening. And there's a lot of good things too. So as we move into the energies that have been triggered here in the 8th level, we're finding that what really, really makes us happy, what makes our heart sing, is usually directly related to our divine purpose as we start to have it shown to us, or it opens and awakens to us. Here, we understand that we're a part of the plan, that there is a reason for us to be here, that we're probably, unlike the other levels, not going to be leaving here. Ashtar isn't going to come down and take us away in some spacecraft or something right now. We're here to do the long haul and to finish this process, complete what we've come here to do. So this is where that begins to dawn on many of us in this 8th level. And even in the saying of those words, you can feel energetically that they're starting to be a sort of settling in, a calming down, a coming into a more grounded experience with that energy. It doesn't feel so chaotic at the moment. So also, as we had the beginnings of the awakening in the 7th level of the pineal and the pituitary, in the 8th level, those two begin to completely open. And as they do, they start to grow and change. They can change in shape, they can change in size, they can take on a different kind of appearance, but mostly they start to expand and go from sometimes more of a spherical or a P shape into more of an elongated shape, or, I mean, who knows? I mean, it could be, I'm not really sure. All I know is that I've been told that it changes. And also within our chakra system, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward, but the chakras themselves, as these pineal pituitary awakens and your energy shifts and the levels start to unlock, they start to unlock the DNA. When the DNA starts to open and unlock, corresponding to these levels of light body, we begin to experience a change in the way that the chakras move. The chakras no longer spin, but they become spirals, and they start to spiral. And it can look like a spiral coning upwards into the higher levels. And those will eventually continue to connect up into the higher chakra levels in our energetic bodies, energetic system, as the light body is forming and more light is coming in. I know that a lot of this may sound like too much, but if you start at the beginning of these recordings and you take each level as we've tried to address them and explain them, it will begin to make more sense to you that this is a unified and connected and interwoven process that brings in, corresponds to, and integrates with all of the other systems that have expressed in what we call the world of separation. Okay, where you see yourself as in polarity, or identifying each of your bodies or each of your systems as separate. We're returning to a state, and although we're talking about these light body levels as though we're creating them, we're really not creating them. They are in us, and it's what we've always been, what we began being, and what we're returning to, but with a twist, because we're actually taking the physical body with us. We're not just returning to light. The body is coming to light. So that is the really huge and exciting addition to this entire experience, is that we were light when we were created, and we did express in that way originally, but this is different. This is a gift given to the new creation that is in us, being coded and seeded to awaken into birth into some new creation. And this new creation carries the light that we are, that we were with us, but in a form of type. It won't be carbon form, it will be crystalline form, it will hold more light, and we will express this out. But this is the idea, okay? And the concept of what this light body or ascension process is truly supposed to all be about. There's been a lot of takes on this, and people have a lot of different ideas, but this happens to be ours and the way that I've received it. So this is what I'm going to talk about today.
Well,
you have any comments so far?
Yeah, what's fun to me is the whole idea that it's containing the integration, which is leading to the expansion. And when I think of the expansion of consciousness, that just really makes me happy, because it feels so blissful is too limiting of a word, but it's like going home.
Yeah.
It's like what I have felt when I've had private session with you, and you reached, you know, I go to those higher levels that it's like, oh, this just feels so comfortable. It feels like home, and it's not where I'm used to being, but I want to stay there.
Oh, that's so nice. Yeah. I can relate to that. I do agree with that very much so.
And that's why this level just really, as I've been pursuing it with you, just feels so good, because some of the wobble from the previous levels, it's like, oh, it's all coming together now as we are weaving that into the rebirth.
Well, that's a really good way of putting it. Thank you. The seventh level is a toughie, because it's a huge transitional plane. I'm going to say that word, and I don't know why or where that's coming from right now, but it's a place within us and within our consciousness, like you were just stating, where we hold certain concepts of self and of experience and we'll bring those into the eighth level and understand that there's so much more that's being released in the seventh. We're kind of letting go. We have been letting go in all of those other levels. You know, each one of us has been asking us more and more and more to release, to not resist, and to let it fly, to trust, you know, in our soul, in ourself, and where we're going. That, of course, is a really tricky thing for most of us in the human form. So as the pineal and the pituitary open at this level, and all of this begins to shift and change, of course, it's going to create some experiences within our heads, our craniums. You know, you were making more room for this expansion and for these two incredibly, what we call smaller collective brain between the pineal and the pituitary to start coming online and functioning. And there will be some pain that comes with it. You might have specifically, which is really interesting, is that it seems to attach itself to back pain. And a lot, maybe possibly of headaches, a lot of different kinds of headaches that you might need to ask for help with. If you start to get too much expansion in your head, you might want to ask them to release endorphins, for example. Endorphins are like a brain opiate, so it'll help to calm that pain. And you can also ask your body, yourself, your own soul, to back off with some of the energies if you feel like it's coming on too strong. And we did talk about this a little bit I don't remember if it was in the chakras or one of the other levels or something. You have to be aware, and not just through this particular experience, but through all of the experiences that you have in your life, that you are your soul, that you are in charge of your journey, and you only need to tell your body what you need, what you needed to do, and allow, without question, just know that it is going to serve you. It doesn't understand. It functions in the ways that it does, and it functions by our directive, by our words and our thoughts. So it expresses that, and what we think immediately shows up in it, because that's what it regroups and reorganizes itself to do. So as we go through each of these levels of experience, all we really need to do, and I lose, what I want to say, I forget quite often as we're going through some of these experiences in our physical selves, as we transition, period, as we, go about our third dimensional, fourth dimensional lives, that we have this power, that we are powerful, that this is our God-given right, and this is our God-given body. We chose it, we make it, we see it and create it moment by moment by what we think we're seeing, by what we want to see, by what we maybe don't want to see, because those are the thoughts that you're holding. So we just need to remember that, as we stated in the revelation in Light Body 7, that we are all masters, that this is something that we're being asked to work with, to understand, to own, to really, really embrace, is that we are masters. We are masters of our life. We are masters over our body. We're masters over our emotions and our mental selves. We're masters over our world, our creation, and it is as we say it is. And when we no longer say it is, it has no right to exist. So that's how powerful you are. And you may contradict, everything in reality. You may be being asked to say, okay, I'm crazy because this is what the whole rest of the reality thinks that it is. But if you never accept that, if you feel differently, if you see differently, if you know differently within your own being, follow your inner self, follow your inner knowing, follow what you know and not what your outer senses tell you are experiencing. It doesn't mean don't trust what you see or what you hear or anything like that. You can take it in, but it doesn't have to add to or attach itself to what you wish or desire to create. What you say is the truth of your life. It can be there. You can say, oh yeah, a collective has shown me that. But that doesn't have to be your reality. This is where we're being asked to work with these things, to embrace our power, our inner magic, basically. And really, really set into foundation, into motion, what our vision is, what the vision of the divine is that's in each and every one of us that we're carrying forward. What do you want? What do you not want? Who are you? Who are you not? What are you about? What are you not about? What do you know? What do you not know? And stick with it. Just be with it, because if it's supposed to evolve, it will evolve. I know I just went off on a tangent, but I think this is really important, because this is the stage where this comes into play. So as you start to feel these things or hear these things, perhaps you'll be more open to not thinking they're so crazy or they're just these are nonsensical thoughts that are coming into my mind. Where is this coming from? This can't be true. Well, I promise you it is. And this is exactly how it awakens itself, how it opens up to you, and how we begin to understand who we are. You can probably hear me flipping pages. That's because I'm flipping my channel writings.
Well, I think that that's where the trust comes in, of trusting yourself.
Yeah.
And getting away from the outside influences that are feeding any resistance that we might be noticing within ourselves to the heart-centered, the feeling of expansiveness from our heart, that we are going forward in a different way than the people around us. And that's not a bad thing sometimes. It's just your own unique journey, which is so different from every other individual's unique journey.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you. We're being asked to do a lot of things at this time, and I know that you have the inner strength, or you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be here at this particular time if this were not something guided by your soul for you to experience. And I'll just put another little addition to that, and Betty mentioned it in the introduction, that also you wouldn't probably be coming across this information right now if it weren't absolutely timely and important for you to at least have bumped into it and consider it and see if it resonates with you or if it doesn't. So at this level, you also start to have an activation of what we call seed crystals, okay, because we are becoming or moving from a carbon or dense-based, carbon-based life to a crystalline life, or crystalline-based. So these particular light crystals, or seed crystals, are starting to receive light languages. And maybe some of you have come across that in your spiritual researches or journeys here, or even experienced it perhaps in your own life. These seed crystals, there are two, and one is above each brow. Okay, you have one above each brow, and there is one also, so that makes three. The two are above each of the brows, and the third one is at the hairline, or right over the nose at the base of the hairline. These three crystals receive what we call light languages from other dimensions. All right, and we're not talking about necessarily other creatures or anything ooey. The other dimensions are more than likely still connected to you and places where you experience. Okay, so there are other selves of you who are experiencing as part of your overlight in those particular dimensions. And they hold lots of activation, okay? There's a lot of different types of languages, and I wasn't sure how much I'm going to go into that in our particular recording, Betty, because it's quite extensive, but just to sort of touch on it, let me see what I've got here. The light languages can be, so here's a definition of it, just so that you all have this. And it is, the light languages and healing is a spiritual practice that involves using sacred languages such as ancient tongues or channeled languages to facilitate healing, personal growth, and spiritual awakening. It says practitioners believe that these languages carry high vibrational energies that can help to balance and align the body, mind, and spirit. light language is often expressed through spoken words, writing, singing, or hand gestures, and is thought to bypass the conscious mind and directly impact the subconscious and energy fields. So this is a definition as far as what I could find as a definition for you. I will tell you that what my knowing of it is I've experienced a few of these particular experiences in my very first stages of awakening. And I won't get into a lot of it, but I had what might be called to some a rather instantaneous awakening. In other words, when I awoke all the way. However, I didn't, in my physical mind, my Robin mind, I did not understand everything. Okay, I came across a million things as I opened up and began to study and read and experience more things. And of course, every single thing that I did was brought to me. It wasn't something I had to go search for. It just sort of unfolded because my soul knew exactly we were just on track. We were on fire. And it opened, it awoke. But again, I didn't know anything on the human plane. I hadn't read, I hadn't studied, I hadn't had tools. I had a little bit of metaphysical study. But that was about the extent of it. So one morning, wasn't a few months, I guess, maybe into my awakening, I woke up one morning and I was speaking in another language. And I sat there. There was nothing I could do about it. I just sat up out of bed, had been asleep, and I was speaking another language for probably 45 minutes to an hour. I had no idea what I was saying. I had no idea why I was saying it. I wasn't really aware that I was doing it at the levels that most of us are aware of in our day-to-day life, but it was going on. And it sounded familiar. It sounded like a familiar language, but when I went to go look up some of the words, they were closely related to some major or what we call core languages here on the earth, but they were old, they were ancient, and they weren't complete. It's like there were only certain words that fell into that category. The rest of it was outside of it. After this experience, I started having other experiences with, and I think most people have these, but lots and lots of tones, a lot of experiences where everything kind of goes just absolutely silent around you. It's like a big black thing just around you, and you start hearing vibrations and tones going on. There were all kinds of things. I would see things dropping like in midair. They talk about what we call sigils or signals or codes. Some are like Morse code, the sounds that you get. Some are like high pitch, low pitch frequencies, pulses. There's all kinds of things. So the reason I'm stating this is because they're all inclusive in this experience. You may see sacred fire letters. You may see ancient languages written like be in front of you, or you may even start speaking them. So these are some of the things that start to open as your pineal and your pituitary come online, and as these different levels of light are awakening your strands of DNA, because those, of course, when each one of your strands of DNA awaken, it connects you into your different dimensional levels of expression. So, and that was something that maybe we wanted to talk about, huh?
Yes, I was a little bit confused as I was reading some of the information you had sent out, the difference between the light body levels and the dimensional levels. Is this a good time to address that?
I think it's perfect. Thank you for that question. There is big difference between the light body levels. Now, the light body levels are levels that are contained within the DNA that we carry at this time. So they're exclusive to processes and stages of development within our physical self, okay, and the bodies surrounding our physical self, all right, mental, emotional, spiritual, and physical. And those are necessary to be awakened and in full operating function and expression in order for us to become our next thing, whatever we're mutating or evolving into in its highest expression. The reason that is necessary is because as each one of them opens, it does activate or touch or start to connect into what we call dimensional levels. But the dimensions are different. The dimensions exist outside. Well, I shouldn't even say outside. They are eventually a part of us, but they're for now a plane of existence, a timeline, a world, a reality. It's held in a different space than the activity of what we call light body process. However, they all do connect. They all will eventually unify and become one. And that's how we find ourselves ascending into. As we open each of these levels, we can access more of our dimensional self, okay, what we are in the higher and higher and higher vibrational frequencies and levels of our being or of reality, of experience, of physicality. And so these dimensions that we're going to talk about are also all within what we call matter. Okay, it's still physical realm, physical creation, whether it's, when we talk about the first to the 12th, okay, 6th level holds masters, 7th level is a transitional, transformational dimension, 8th level, you start to get into the higher angelics and other dimensional states of experience. So that's about the best I can express it right now, but we're not talking about exactly the same thing. So as I get more into this, because there will be more reference to light body and what it's unlocking, triggering, or attaching itself to dimensionally, it's important for you to understand that they're not exactly the same thing. So thank you. When I was first rereading it, it was a little bit from my head to figure out, to separate those a little bit so that I could understand what was playing on what. Because the 7th level light body is not the 7th dimension. Right. All right? Maybe that's more clear. When we talk about the 6th level light body, it's not the 6th dimension. Okay? Right. They're different. But it will tell you in places in here that you may be doing something in the 8th level in this section that we're discussing today, and it's triggering like the 6th dimension. So it's not the 8th dimension it's triggering the 6th. So anyway, it's a little bit confusing, but I hope that helps a little bit.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, long answer, but saying it a lot of different ways sometimes hits people.
Very helpful.
How they need to hear it. Okay, so that was perfect because we did want to discuss the languages and the other dimensions. So also we talked about the seed crystals and where they're located and kind of a little bit about what they do. There's also a thing called the recorder cell receiver, which exists in the higher dimension. And this recorder cell receiver is on the right side of the head, and it's about 1.5 inches above the ear. And when this activates, it is connected into that higher dimension where there is a structure, a cell crystal that holds vast amounts of information that the soul has gathered in, well, many, many, many of its incarnational cycles, or our journeys. So there's a lot of that information that's held there. You know how sometimes you'll say, oh, I got a massive download last night. I think that most people would probably don't consciously focus or decipher how the information's coming in or what experiences physically that they're having with it. They're more preoccupied with the information that's coming in, because that starts to send the mind into a tizzy trying to figure out how to interpret all this information, what to do with it, and where it came from. So we oftentimes don't pay much attention to the experience that we're having that's connected to this download, right? The information that's coming through. So sometimes you might feel tingling or burning, or even kind of a liquidy sensation that might start to happen in that particular area when that receiver crystal opens up and starts to release its download to you. What is actually happening with this process is that here at the 8th, 9th, and 10th chakras, at this level and during this experience, the 8th, 9th, and 10th chakras activate. Okay? So what is going on is that the crystals are releasing. You're in the 8th level of light body. You're having that experience. But if you know about the chakra system, you have the 1 through the 7, right? And the 8th is like up here. The 8th, in the 8th level light body, when these experiences come online, your 8th, 9th, and 10th chakras, so your 3 higher chakras above the body, begin to activate. All right, we're coming online with those after your 8th body ignition in your light body. Again, not quite the same thing as a dimension, but, we'll get there. So at that time, the 3 to 5 crystalline templates that are held, within. There are templates held within each of these levels, of these chakra systems, all right, in our chakras. There are templates that hold what we call the blueprint or the design, how we read and what those chakras manage, all right? What is held within the definition of each of those chakras. So in 8th, 9th, and 10th chakra systems, the 3 to 5 crystalline templates in the 8th chakra realign, which changes the experience of that chakra, like I talked about earlier, from spinning, because normally when we stay balanced, the chakras, it's a spinning motion, and it should be spinning really clearly in one direction. And it goes from the spinning into the spiral. All right, now it's moving, it's shifting, and it's recreating or realigning itself into a spiral motion. All right, now when those open, we're looking at 8th, 9th, and 10th chakras, which are now spiraling. And you can look at it, you can see the spirals going out. It'd be like almost like radio signals or some waves that are going in spiral motions around the top of your head and way above the top of your head as these chakras open. And those are beginning to hook up to your multidimensional mind. Okay, this gives you access now to that higher mind. And in some of our conversations, Betty, you and I had talked before about how the brain has been being worked with for some years now. There's been a lot of work going on with our brains that have been restructuring them, rewiring them to be more of what we would call an interface rather than a computer that feeds us pre-programmed information, all right, where it was before we held all this stuff in there and it was limited because we didn't have, it wasn't open, it didn't open access unless you were the type of individual who could really get your vibration, your frequency, and did all of this beforehand, right? If you've already been through this light body process, then you've arrived there and you've already had that experience. But that opening, that tone at the top of the head has to open, has to awaken in order to start hooking you up, attaching you up into the higher fields of what we call God mind. That is now how our brains are going to interface. They're not going to tell us things that we're seeing in a third dimensional light. They're going to interface with our higher soul, okay, what we really are in light, our divine self. This is what the setup is doing. So, does that make sense so far? Did I explain that? Okay.
Yes, very well. It's like, wow, we are such complex interdimensional beings. And it's exciting to just see the process. Yes, it is exciting. And again, I think one of the most obvious things is that if we don't sit still and quiet long enough, we just don't realize that any of this is going on, that it's happening. We're constantly putting out fires, right? With our body, with our life, with our, whatever's going on with us, we just run around trying to make it right, set it in motion so we can get about our normal, usual lifestyle, life thoughts, life processes, life, what I want to call it, dependencies, playing with the illusion of what that world is rather than adventuring and spending time communing with what's happening in us. What is really going on? What is really happening? So, again, I would urge people to, as much as they can, start to disconnect themselves often from the normal noises of the world and get back to being able to hear and listen and observe what is taking place with themselves rather than just being oblivious, really, to it. Because the world entices us and lures us into being obsessed with it, preoccupied with it, right? So the pineal and the pituitary now, when they are functioning together, when they are open, they are one, okay? They come online. So you've got, the pineal in the front, which is the third eye. You've got the pituitary at the back of the cranium. And when those open and activate, they create a line. Now, this line of light that connects the two is being called, and I've received it as the Ark of the Covenant. And a few of the light bodies before, I don't know if it was seventh or sixth, we received the Gate of Eden, right? The Garden of Eden. So now we're at the Ark of the Covenant and what this really is, what it means, and what they've been referring to. This experience is
as it appears. This is the rainbow light that people talk about, okay? And it will appear from the soft part of the head, the fourth eye, and it comes in around the front of the head to the third eye. And I would assume that that is what looks like an arc, a rainbow arc over the head, right? This light that starts to illuminate. And it connects up, now what we've been discussing, it connects up that God mind, right? What you're starting to experience from these higher minds into your third eye. So again, it's like bypassing the system. It's creating a new system which doesn't have to go through the brain to tell it, oh, this is what you're looking at or this is what you're seeing. You're going directly outside of that whole circuitry and into the third eye to see divinely. So you're seeing things as they are, not as through the illusion. Okay, we'll say through the veil. There's nothing to keep you from having accurate sight at this point. And it doesn't mean you go away or anything, you know, you're not finished. It's just that you start to be able to see from a higher place. You're in your God mind. And I've had this experience. I think what this is all about for me, and I don't tell many people this, but having awakened so quickly, so instantly, and gone fully through and experienced and done ascension, and I'm writing about a lot of things where, you know, the timelines have been reset, where we did have ascension, the shift did take place, we have completed a lot of these things, but then they're reset, and it's reset to allow, like, the next cycle, right? The next cycle of beings to go through this again, to do this again, and arrive, and maybe more of them to arrive. Maybe, you know, not just the pioneers or a few of the beings, but that they could come back or stay here, not even come back, but stay here within some part of the vibration of the timeline to be able to help others understand this process and what goes on and what happens within it and why, you know, which is really to free you, to free us from the density. It isn't to free you from connection to love or to nature or to, you know, relationship or expression or creativity or any of those things. It's really more to free us from the things that have been creating pain and limitedness and a lot of those things that everybody's going, you know, why does God allow these things to go on? So I'm not going to get philosophical with that right now, but so we'll talk to the Ark of the Covenant. So this is where we are. This appears as that rainbow of light that arcs over the head, and it also begins to assist us in decoding those higher dimensional languages, okay, the languages of light that are coming in. So now you've had the languages of light start to seed in us. They're starting to release. We're getting familiarized with them in the earlier parts of 8, and a little bit, I'd say probably even at the end, starting into the last part of the 7th level light body. So now we're fully into the 8. Everything's starting to come online the way it should within that particular level of light body. And we are starting to begin to have the, I'm going to say, mechanism for higher dimensional language. Okay, so we're starting to be able to bring that online so we can understand it. And again, the higher dimensional language is just bypassing the old system that we had in place, the old pathways, neurological pathways, the old wiring of how everything worked before in our thought process. So we don't need that. It's kind of like a human being deciding maybe it doesn't need church anymore, or it doesn't need a minister, a mediator, a pastor, or somebody interpreting things. It doesn't need a mediator between itself and God, or itself and its soul, or its source, or its knowing, or its wisdom, or love. That's basically what the physical is doing now. And the only way to do that is to bring on, the light, the truth. Let it not have any mediator. There's no block, there's no limit, there's no barrier now. So all of the structure, the design, energetically is being set, prepared, put in place. So in order for us to be able to function that way, before all of this does fully come in and online, right? So we're ready for it. We've got the groundwork laid and the design there. So at this point, the brain begins to change as well. We've talked about all of these things changing, their form, their shape, all of this, their design. So the brain begins to change, and we start to think in terms of geometries, tones, that language of light that we were receiving before. We're understanding that as our new language. It has form and logic and meaning, and it starts to become clear to us what those things are, what they mean, and we're learning a new language, basically. So
that's where it comes into trust. And I think those of us who are very mental and want to understand things, sometimes that gets in the way of trusting the information that's coming in instead of what we're thinking. And so I've learned to let go of understanding or pushing forward and wanting to go to the next level, and allowing. And to me, that theme of allowing has been going on for several years, of stepping back and not pushing forward.
Yeah, the needing to know, right?
That's important for my process.
That's cool. I'm glad it's working that way for you. It's tough. I mean, it really is tough, especially, as I've worked over the years with people who, there's a lot of people who are more spiritual or more emotionally. They're more in those bodies, and that's how they function and operate. And then there are those who are mental body oriented. And I found that, I wouldn't say one is more complicated than the other, because the emotional can be pretty rough. But the mental bodied beings, yes, they do, the mind is so much more at play all the time, constantly, needing to know. And it's always the what ifs and setting that up, because I don't know if it's in this. I'm hoping that maybe it is. I think it's in this one, that we come, so you just set this up so beautifully. Thank you for being ahead of me on this. There's a need for us to understand that when we're functioning in the now, which is what's really kind of coming online for us, maybe we talked about that in the 7th level. It is functioning in the now, but the mind functions in the future, right? The what if. It's always asking, it's always ahead of itself, it's always projecting, but there really is no future. It hasn't been created yet. So we're always in the now. There's no time, there's no past. The emotional functions in the past. And yes, we did discuss that the last conversation, didn't we? Okay, so that's where that starts to really, really play. And in the 8th body, we should be being held a bit more in the now, which, like you said, helps us, assists us, supports us in being able to let go of a lot of the need to know. We start feeling less compelled, frantic about needing to know or understand everything. So it is a little bit easier for us to kind of settle into it and allow things to just unfold somewhat, hopefully. And a lot of these really different experiences that are entering into this at this time may also be helping us do that, because there is no way that we're able to interpret light languages as they start to come in, or understand all of this craziness that begins to be a part of what is perhaps our normal experience or normal states of being, where we really truly reside, which is in light and with source already. So we're remembering, right? But there wouldn't be a way for us to do that unless we could do it out of body. I mean, once you're in light again, you're there, and all of that probably makes sense to us. But being in a body, then the body has to kind of be reset somewhat, remade, in order to help facilitate that and allow us to be able to do it, which is really what I find so fascinating about this, is that it's almost like a forced mutation. We're having to do it. It's a quick evolution, a quickening, as they used to call it, which I think we're all kind of on that path. So for a time, as we're learning these geometries, these languages, and trying to translate them, you might have experiences of feeling like you can't talk to people, because, of course, if you start telling them that this stuff is going on, they're going to look at you like you have three heads, or you're fearful that you can't explain what it is that you're sensing because you really can't make sense of it or explain it. You might feel like you have Alzheimer's sometimes, because you're quite sure that your experiences are compounding. They're getting more powerful and more powerful. And there are times during the 8th level of light body that you feel like you don't remember what you had for breakfast, or you don't, some of us have had many phases of this, as I've spoken to you about, feeling as though it's coming on really quick, and you might even be in your 20s or 30s and you're telling me this, and I'm saying, no, that can't be what's happening to you, because there's just too many people telling me this. So what is really happening at this particular point, when we were talking about how the whole body and the brain and everything is restructuring, is that at that particular time, we've all been functioning on such a small part of our brains, right? Our mind. It's like, what, 9-10% of our total brain function. So what happens at this specific time, as they've explained it to me, is that 10% begins to shut down. Now, it's not completely shut down, because the other's being built, right? The expansion into the vastness of this God mind that we're connecting up into is preparing itself. So everything is being built. It's being restructured. But there's the bypass, when that arc comes in of the covenant, is the promise of, right? The rainbow represents the promise of it coming, and of you never having to have that again. So it lights up, it comes from the divine, from the God mind, and it comes in through the pineal, the third eye. And so your God awareness, your God mind, your God sight, vision, knowing, being able to be in the world but not of it, to be able to bring your divine power, your love, your wisdom, and function in any dimension or reality that you desire or choose, is being set for you to experience and have access to your multidimensional, vast miraculous, sovereign, beautiful self. But your 10%, you're losing. It doesn't mean that you'll lose the accumulated, because that goes into that recorder cell, right? It's stored because it was a journey. It was an experience that you had. So it's being stored in this recorder cell, which is kept safely in another dimension of you. And it holds, some people, I don't know if this is the same thing. It may not be. And there would probably be people who fight me on it. But as I was reading it, I thought, is this the Akashic record that people talk about, right? But it's not, because I went and asked. And that happens to hold every thought, every activity, everything that's ever happened in all of creation since the beginning of creation, whether it's a meteor that hit a planet, or it's a bee that, interacted with a flower, or it's every experience. That the Akashic record is said to have that vast an information. The recorder cell holds all of your journeys, all right, the soul's experience and journeys as it relates to it and as it needs. So the 10% that we've always had, that kind of evolved and got so, we're so all that, we know so much. It's all in there, that little tiny 10%. But we're closing that down. It's closing it off so that you can access. So in the 8th level of light body, there's a lot of times when you feel like you're really slipping, like it's scary, because a lot of your memory, a lot of stuff disconnects, kind of goes away from you. And you think that you might have some really, really big problems, but just hang in there, and you can always talk to yourself and tell it what you're experiencing. And, I'm getting a bit fearful here, could you ease up on the closing down yet until the new business is open here, so that I can still function a bit. So all these old pathways in your brain are becoming non-accessible while the new ones are being created. Symptoms, tones, bands of light, color, geometry, motion, all of those things you might begin to start seeing in your head and your mind. You might see equations. We talked about that earlier, Hebrew letters, hieroglyphics. I think it's almost like a review or a pouring out of all languages, or a revisitation of them, almost like a perusing through them, a brushing through them, to refresh, remind the mind of how language is interrelated and works together. So at this point, which is extremely huge and powerful and unforgettable, it is at this point that you're at the point of going home. This is where everything is turned. And we're coming home, kind of like what we said about the 3rd level. Once you hit the 3rd level of light body, there's no going back, right? You started into the process. Well, this is the point of you returning home. All right. And a few levels ago, you had your opt-out point, but if you're still here, you're probably not opting out. You're in it. There's no going back now. So the parallel dimensions around us at this point begin to open. And one of the most transformational levels is these new languages that are literally going to go into our DNA. So as the DNA awakens in correspondence to these light levels that we're hitting, the languages are seeding, are going into, streaming into those levels of our DNA, right? We're capturing them. They've actually been encoded, all right? They're waking up, they're encoded. And we may catch ourselves talking in rhyme, talking backwards. This ought to be interesting. Or maybe not being able to talk at all, you know. So Spirit is putting us through direct encodements at this time, and the mutations start becoming more regular and bigger, and they start to affect the nervous system now. And the nervous system will be heightened, I guess, somewhat to handle the degree of energy and light that should now be coming in, because all of the seeding, the seed crystals, the templates, you know, everything now, us coming online, our brains, the arc, you know, all of this energy has been structured. So now, of course, the light is resonant to that field, and it's going to start testing, right? Coming in, and as much as it can, and start making a home for itself in a body that is kind of going offline to what we call carbon experience, and more online to these activated now crystalline centers that are opening within our physical bodies. You know, and we've talked about this many times before, because people, I mean, so many things happen, and it affects it, and we may not cover all of them here, because I've experienced that, you know, there can be like huge changes in your physical form, like gigantic weight gain or weight loss, or you just don't want food anymore. You know, there may be all kinds of strange things that get triggered as imbalance. I mean, I don't even want to say imbalance, but maybe not normal functioning of the way that your body expresses itself. So watch for these things. Do the best you can at using the unified chakra meditation, and you really can pull that up online. All you have to do is type it into Google. That's how I found it a long time ago. And there's lots of other things that help you to balance and to center, to rebalance yourself when you start to feel yourself going, whoa, you know, a little bit cattywampus there. What else did I want to tell you about that? So some of the symptoms when the nervous system is starting to be affected and your energies are going up is your eyesight might get really blurry. You might get the ringing in the ears increases. Your sensory apparatus are being required to process, like we said, a lot more light. So just be aware, be patient with yourself, be good to yourself, keep your sense of humor, because it might not be so funny, but if you think it's funny, it might be funny. It's all in how you look at it, right? So keep that sense of humor going. That's always important. Again, because the nervous system is involved, it can throw off the electrical system for the heart. So you may get like increased heart palpitations or that arrhythmia or those flat racing type of experiences. Now, one of the reasons is because you're developing a fifth dimensional circulatory system in this eighth body or eighth level light body. So it's a fifth dimension. Now remember, not light body, fifth dimensional circulatory system called the axial system. So your heart might be receiving like two different electrical impulses at the same time, because you have an axial and an autonomic nervous system, right? That both have a function or a play on what we call our hearts. And so when those start to merge, when they collide with each other, it can create a little bit of problem for a while. But what we did note also on a good note is that when 95% of light workers were in the 8th level doing this new paradigm with these two nervous system experiences coming online or impulses, they began to connect to what they call group mind. Okay? So when you start to experience, okay, so this is your multidimensional self coming on, right? They were able to bring in new paradigms. So creating, we're hitting this place now within our own divine level or divine being or expression where we're able to create new paradigms, programs of service, new expressions for the planet. So it's kind of like a direct line to source at this point. And the heart, again, being the most important gate, right? That level that absolutely, when it expands, it is the beginning, the birth of your multidimensional self, all that you are or ever will be. And so that's kind of where we're at with the 8th level at this point. Do we have anything to say at this place?
It's just so spacious and expansive, and it just feels good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a very huge level of body to understand. I don't know. Are we at a place where we'd like to tackle the 9th level, or do you think that this is enough for our audience for today?
This is a lot to digest today, and I think that just re-listening to the information for this 8th level will be very instructional for allowing more of that experience, knowing it's okay, knowing that you're going into a different place, and that we really are leaving the past behind in a greater way than the previous 7 levels.
Yeah, that's a good point. I do too. I love being able to offer this to people, and I hope that it does serve them. I hope it does help and give them something to chew on, something to help them navigate these times ahead, or maybe even the times that they had passed already and what they went through, what was really happening. And again, I allude to a lot of things because I know that our times are so unique, so different now than they were when I was first receiving this information and these words, that we've come so far and possibly even experienced several, like I said, of ascensions, already completions at certain levels, and find ourselves back again. And I want to suggest that the possibility of being back again also brings with it a higher degree of processing these levels, more gifts, more power, more understanding, and more for us to know about where we're headed and what all of this is really about. But I do know that we've been creating all along the way. And the more of us who get involved in this, the more of us that understand consciously what's happening with us and to us, and understand that it connects us all, that it interplays and weaves us into the same beautiful light of divinity that is the spark that we are, and that the divine creator, the all in all, the all that is, whatever that is, instilled in us to light our way, our path to return, is the call that we all receive at some point, sometime. And just be discerning, like you said earlier, it's real important to keep that discernment with us, to be aware of places that want to call you to something other than what you know yourself to be and what you know to be the truth of your life. Because there will be plenty of them to try to convince you that that isn't true. There's always that wants to hide or pull from you the opportunity for you to see yourself as you truly are and to embrace the beauty of that and to come to wholeness and peace and love. In that state, we create and bring through what is everlasting, not that which is short-lived any longer, or not alive, or not real, or recyclable. We start to become creators of something that is, I should say, co-creators together. No longer a co-creator, co-participant in, I think, a divine way, because we're coming to know ourselves as that. That we're not separate from that. It doesn't mean that, in the ways that people have issues with it, we're God. But in a sense, because we're all a part of that mind, that knowing, that spark, that light, that thought, we are. And so allowing ourselves to let that expression speak through us becomes, in the 8th level, our joy, our desire. We're starting into that process, into that path of embracing that as the only thing that really matters to us, and is being that joy, that happiness, that connection, and that light. So on that, I think I'll just leave it for now and suggest that you prepare yourself for the 9th level and the 10th and the 11th and 12th, because it just gets better from there,
Thank you so much, Robin. This is just such a pleasure to have this in our consciousness, so we have the opportunity to provide less resistance to the continued growth and emergence for being that bright light that we all are, and let go of the patterns that have been our habits in the past. So you're just a wonderful guide. And I wanted to mention that your website is embracingsource.com. And
yes,
there, for all of us who are looking to enjoy more of Robin's gifts, there's so many resources on your website. There's so many recordings that you've done. There's meditations, the services that you provide. And I want to specifically mention that a private session with you is just such a wonderful gift of expanding beyond these teachings and putting a personal interpretation that's reflecting back from your soul that you may not understand. It's just recognizing more of who you really are because you have that ability to reach in and connect and channel back to a person. So I hope I explained that in a very awkward way, how impactful
beautiful.
your gifts are.
Thank you so much, Betty. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm always happy to be of any kind of service I can to people. And when you're in, crisis or find yourself in a major transformational space, I'm your girl.
And
I'm really happy to be of any help.
And I think that in this space and time, there's a lot of folks who just can be more authentic to who they are from the heart and soul level with the guidance because there's so many powerful energies that are pulling everybody to different spaces. And what I mentioned last time was, a lot of people are in a wobble, and that then, I just find that finding a little bit more direction can be very calming so that you can be in that space of allowing.
Yeah. Beautifully said. Thank you so much. And I so appreciate you having me all the time. You being so gracious and giving of your time too. And your comments are always so helpful and clear and insightful and grounded. And I can't say enough good things. So thank you so much.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate everyone who has tuned in, all of our friends who just are part of this journey with all of us. So thank you.
Yes. Okay. Next time. See you next time.
Yes.